Alrighty, so strategic planning is one of my favorite parts of the year. Not because it's December and it's near the holiday and New Year, but I like having the space and the time to think big, look through the forest, through the trees, whatever that saying is. And I know we are a SaaS business, but in my last 5-6 years of running Elevar, I've made a lot of friends that are customers, non-customers that are brand owners themselves, so D2C brand owners. And we talk and collaborate a lot of what we do, what I do as a business owner, what they're doing as a business owner or department leader or executive at the company. And frankly, there's so many parallels. There's more than what I think most probably believe. Simple things like I talked about the scorecard that we use in our company in our weekly Monday meeting. And one of my friends, I won't name the brand name, but they took that scorecard and implemented it in their company, and they've used it since then. They said it was a game changer. So that's why I'm sharing my framework for Elevar and what we are doing in strategic planning in the hopes that this can help you. So you might be able to take all 4 frameworks or pieces of each one, but I thought it would be useful to share a little bit of what we do behind the scenes, because ultimately, if you're a customer, this impacts you at the end of the day. So the 4 main frameworks that I'll be going through are, one is called L4 forecasting, and I have a bunch of notes here that I'll be reading off and scrolling up and down towards the video. So we have the L4 forecasting. We have just general strategic planning. So think vision, mission, etc. But strategic planning going into the year, which we also will call slingshot planning on our team quite a bit. Then I'll get into what I also have learned and called a preloaded year, which I've also spoken to many of you about, just planning your year ahead. And then last but not least is the new you, which is something I learned from David Cancel in one of my masterminds. He's the founder of Drift and I think 4 other companies, super, super successful. And this is honestly one of my favorites new strategies. And I'm implementing this in 2024 in my own way. All right, so let's start with L4 forecasting. So last 4 forecasting. So this isn't necessarily the first thing that you have to do, but again, each one of these 4, they're kind of like, think a Venn diagram where all 4 on their own are great, but when you put them together, that center is what makes it really, really powerful. So don't necessarily take these in order of priority or how you need to execute. L4 forecasting. Old way, you're getting ready to plan. So you're looking at whether it's revenue or conversion rate or average order value or whatever it might be in your business, profit. And you look at, so this is the old way, and this is an L4. The old way is you look at, okay, what do we do this year? And then you are forecasting ahead. So in my world, what it used to be 5, 6, 7 years ago, I think, okay, what do I want to do next year? I want to grow, 10, 15% per month. Drag that across 12 cells or 11 cells in Google Sheets, and that tells me, hey, here's my forecast for the year. And you can do that again. Well, it doesn't matter if it's revenue, profit, etc. That's just bad. So it's just a bad way of forecasting, especially when you get to the sophistication. Many of you probably aren't doing that anymore, but think about layers down. So think about conversion rate or average order value. So conversion rate could be, hey, we're going to hire or go really deep into conversion rate optimization, and we believe we should be able to incrementally improve conversion rate by X over these number of months, and just, again, assume that that's going to come to fruition. So why this is bad, in my opinion, it's the way the dartboard has a low probability of success, in my opinion. Historically, it's put my focus on what I call blinded optimism, instead of getting real and being realistic on what happened in the last 4 months. It also doesn't do a good job of illuminating existing gaps that need strategic thinking. So when we go through our planning process, there are obviously big rocks. We want to meet our customers where they are going to be in 6 to 12 months. And if we don't go through the process of the L4 forecasting and strategic planning, and we just do hey, we want to grow by this amount next year and just kind of like keep moving on our day, it doesn't force us to illuminate, here's where we want to be. Here's what the L4 is telling us. We're off by 100%. How the F are we going to fill that gap and go really, really deep on that? So that is, again, why I think this is the old way of just very basic forecasting is bad. So the new way, last 4 forecasting, it's the average of the last 4 months, and that's the best predictor of the future performance. So as an example, you can take the average of whatever metric you want to use. So in Elevar, We've done this with revenue. We've done this with sales opportunities. We've done this with close rates, et cetera. So going down the list in each department, you can even think customer support, average response time, average responses back and forth to ticket closing. It doesn't really matter. It works with any metric. But what's the average of the last 4 months? And then we use that to project the next 12 months. That's like let's keep it real. So generally, if you are a business that's growing, if we are looking at September to December and we average that out for the next 4 to 8 months, so January to August in 2024, if you're looking at year over year, you're still going to be ahead of last year. So it's still projecting growth if you're doing a year over year comparison, but you might be looking at a little bit of a lower number than what you have in your head, which we're going to get to in a second. We normalize it. So I will normalize with seasonality. With our business, Elevar, the seasonality is a little bit different from you or our D2C brands. So there's a few months throughout the year that are typically really slow for us. So we will normalize that down. And then there's months that we have seen will pick up going into Black Friday. So for us, August, September, October, those can be a little bit busier or a lot busier. And then typically with you, it's probably a little bit slower. And then you really pick up in October, November, and into December. So you can't normalize this for seasonality, just doing trend adjustments. As time progresses over the year, you want to reforecast your L4 every couple months. I mean, it really depends on how precise you want to get with things, but just do a reforecast of, okay, if it's now March or April, what did the last 4 months look like? Is it better or worse? Is the L4 better or worse than what you had originally projected in November, December at the end of your planning? And then just create that new baseline. Why I like L4, it grounds me in reality. I want to have a really big, ambitious goals for our team, for our customers, again, to just be the best that we can for them. But the L4 grounds me in reality. It's also really easy to calculate and explain. Hopefully this is an example of that. You're not like, thinking, what the hell is Brad talking about with this L4? But in general, I found it's easy to explain. I've trained my department leaders to use this on their own as well. The third point and third reason why I like the L4 and feel like it's better is, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, it forces you to recognize the gap. So where are you today? Where do you want to be in the future? How do you do it? How do you get there? How do you close that gap? So if you are at $10 million and you want to grow 50% next year and hit $15 million, but your L4 forecast puts you at 12 million, where's the other 3 million coming from? Are you increasing spend in existing channels? Are you increasing conversion rate or AOV? Are you adding in new growth channels? Are you getting more efficient with people in process? It doesn't matter. There's so many different things. Are you ramping up inventory, et cetera? So once you have that gap, then you start asking yourself those questions. Well, like, oh, how am I going to make that happen? Is it going to be more sessions, higher conversion rate, or higher AOV or RPV? So that's L4. Again, first part of this little Venn diagram or the layer of the onion, which leads into strategic planning, which is the next one. So strategic planning, I'm going to assume you already have some sort of vision, whether you set the vision or your founder set the vision or your team or whatever it might be, but I'm going to assume you already have some sort of vision. If you don't, start there. An easy definition that I like to use and think about is fast forward 25 years and describe a vision of the future world, industry, and company that is created based on the work and effort by your team and the impact of your product. So again, vision, if you don't have it, fast forward 25 years and describe that vision of the future world. What does it look like? What's your industry? What is your company? Think about if you were on the front page of the New York Times or any other like famous magazine or show or TV. What are they explaining? What are they saying about you? So the way that I like to do strategic planning is very much similar to like the traction model, if you're familiar with traction. So I like starting with a 10-year target. So what is our overarching goal? What does a business look like in 10 years? So I get descriptive, think big. I won't initially name brands that I've seen some of their vision or their strategic planning, but they're talking about new product lines or impacts. So if they're an impact-based brand, the impact that they're having on just our social economy, but just no one's going to hold you to it. No one's going to like hold your feet to the fire on a 10-year target. But the idea here is, especially with your team, is have a vision that's big enough where your team's aspirations and things that they want to achieve, they can see themselves achieving their dreams under the umbrella of your vision, of your company's vision. So that is a little bit of a recommendation on how we think about this. So 10-year vision. Next, I'll move into our 3-year goal planning. So this gets a little bit more quantitative. So what's the size of the business? What are the goals that we've achieved? What do we look like as a company? So with Elevar, when we did our 3-year goal planning, so we had a 3-year plan starting in 2020. I was talking about obviously revenue, headcount, what we're doing in the Shopify ecosystem, how many events that we're speaking at or that I'm speaking at, or where we're being published or featured. So I got really descriptive. There weren't 100 things on there, but it was trying to describe like what's the business look like and how are we going to measure the success of those goals. So once you go through that three-year goal planning, and by the way, I'll have a template for this. So if you're just watching or listening, there'll be a template that you can copy and just follow along. I'll obfuscate a little bit from what Elevar is, but it'll give you a chance to do this on your own. So back to 3 years, and then we move into the 1-year plan. And this again is very, very specific. What's our revenue? What's our profit? What goals do we want to achieve? And what are the main rocks required to get there? So if we have a big goal, so let's say you're rolling out a new product, or you are launching a new website, or you are rolling out subscriptions, whatever it might be, break those big initiatives down. And what are the rocks required to get there? So are there 2, 3, 4 big rocks that you need to get in order to launch that new site, launch that new product, get into Walmart, whatever it might be? What are the steps or the big rocks required to get there? What are the key marketing strategies? So this is another big one, which you all are experts at this already. It's in B2B world. We're not as nearly as I would say strong in this world as many of you are. But what are the marketing strategies? So for example, I'll use Elevar. It's no surprise, one of our big marketing strategies over the years has been content. So content, whether it's our blog, our videos, webinars, podcasts. We've done some paid advertising. So, the normal Google and Facebook, just trying to catch the demand that we're creating. But what if we wanted to get into big influencer or affiliates, or we wanted to do outbound, or whatever it might be? Identify those strategies. So if there's strategies that you feel like you need to add, again, I'll talk from our own perspective. If we need to do something more versus where we're at today, we need to outline that. But if we just need to keep doing what we're doing and do more of it or do it better, that's okay too. Next up in the 1-year plan for us is actually getting into the quarterly rocks, which I mentioned. If you have these big goals or initiatives for the year, what are those rocks? This is where you start to identify and write those down. I don't care if you call them a rock or a strategy or an OKR or whatever it is. There's a great book, Measure What Matters by John Doerr. I think I'm pronouncing his last name right. Great book. We've done OKRs. Right now we kind of like keep it simple. We do follow a big theme as a company. We do quarterly themes that look through the lens of the big company theme. And we do identify the rocks that we need to hit. So this is also something on the brand side. Again, if we are looking at Q1, Q2 growth of, okay, we want to increase revenue by 30% over last year. What are the big things that we need to do? Is it testing more content? Is it whatever it might be, adding the TikTok shop as a new channel? Is it adding Amazon? Is it optimizing Amazon? Whatever it might be, but identify those, get them into that rock. And then that'll allow you and your team to start digging into those of, okay, how are we actually going to break this down into smaller chunks to execute? For the 1-year plan, just revenue plan or department level plans, I do like to do a good, better, best. So I try not to do just here's one number. That's the only thing that we're focused on, even though that is what we look at as a company and a team and our scorecard. But for even just myself or our executive team is have that good, better, best. So we have our best if everything goes as planned and we nail everything, we should hit our best number. Better is kind of like, we should hit this. Or maybe that's a good, I don't know. But anyways, just think like good, better, best. Kind of like what's your goal, and 10% under that, 10% over that. That's some of the good, better, best that I've used. So now that you've gone through that 10-year, 3-year, 1 year, and at this point, this is where I take a step back, look at my L4. So does my L4 forecast match up to my strategic plan. So if my strategic plan for the 1 year is I want to hit 15 million in revenue, but my L4 tells me I'm not going to hit 12 million in revenue, how am I going to do that? Like, where am I way off? Am I way over or way under? So the strategic plan revenue is significantly higher than your L4 reality. So just ask your question, like, how deep have you really dug into your rocks? Are you spending more time in December or January to really get things in place so you can start executing and get ahead of that goal to prevent scrambling in Q3 and Q4? I know this year, more than any, I was getting a ton of these, like just texts. I need a new phone, by the way. My phone is so cracked. Texts and emails and just people asking like, hey, like, what are you hearing? We're having a terrible September, or October's off to a slow start, or just I was hearing more and more of that this year, just as a, I don't know, qualitative piece of feedback. And I think for me, when I hear that, it's not that they were doing anything wrong, but it just reinforced to me for this year going into 2024 is I need to make sure that we do a better job planning. So execute planning earlier, more precise, be more thorough, because we need to get ahead for our customers. And that could just be education, or it could be partnerships, or it could be integrations, or it could be making what we already do better. So even if the general e-com market is down in the end of Q3, as we don't have a Black Friday, Cyber Monday anymore, it's like a Black Friday month, is how can Elevar doing better to start the year buoy our customers the first couple of quarters of the year, so it's not as much of an impact in Q3. We did do some of that this year. So part of our big planning last year was really positioning Elevar as an ROI positive. So you plug Elevar in, you'll make more money. So historically, we're save time, save money, simplify tracking. This year was very much a intentional, we are ROI positive. So that was the key to a lot of our product development that we were starting in 2022 that led to session enrichment, our Klaviyo server-side integrations, all of the server-side integrations that right now you'll see us talk about, plug us in and you'll just make more money based on improvements in meta or improvements in more emails being sent out in Klaviyo. All of that, we didn't decide that in 2023. Those are strategies we talked about in 2022 when we were really just diagnosing what's the market, what are we hearing from our customers now, what are we anticipating is going to happen in 2023. So that's the strategic plan and a little bit of tangible examples of Elevar. Once you have gone through the strategic plan, what I was coached up on this past year was just make it into a nice one-page visual. Again, there'll be an example. There might be one on screen if you're watching this right now, but they're just a nice one-page visual that everyone on your team or your leaders, they're looking at it every day. So it's, if anyone were to ask one of your leaders, hey, what's the plan? What are you trying to achieve this year? Someone should be able to just answer that without having to think too hard about it. So just consolidating that into a nice visual. That way you look at it, you are reminded of it, and your team is reminded of it. You can do things like the vision, mission, values, your goals broken up by half years or by quarters, core strategies, aka rocks, and ultimately how are you going to measure those strategies? So how are you going to measure the strategy effectiveness? Did it go well? Did it not go well? To wrap up the strategy, if it's not obvious by now, I'm very much in the camp of I like the rocks, pebbles, stone. So rocks are like the big thing. There's a good analogy out there where if you're planning, and I'm going to get into this in a preloaded year, think about I think it's an hourglass or vase. And if you start, so you have rocks, pebbles, and stones or sand. If you put the sand in first, the sand's going to fill the whole thing up and you're not going to have any room left for your pebbles or rocks. But if you start with the rocks, so putting the rocks in the vase first and then put the pebbles in, they're going to fall in between and the rocks are going to be the big things. Like what's the one thing you need to do every day to help you achieve your goal? And then once the pebbles are in there, then you put the sand and the sand will fall its way into it. It's just a good framework for you to think about as you are planning your preloaded year, which is number 3. So preloaded year, I learned this in my mastermind. Dal Beaumont, I think he originally taught this years ago in one of our sessions, in my SaaS Academy session. I know Jesse Itzler, I'm actually seeing his ads running now. He calls it his big ass calendar, where it's like a giant calendar that you print out and you plan your whole year out. It is what it sounds like. You are planning your year in December or January. It's the concept. So it may sound easy or hard depending on where you fall in this, but the concept is simple. Like, yes, go ahead. We're going to plan my year ahead and put all my big rocks in there. I will say from my own experience, execution is very hard. So it took me a couple of years. I was trying it, I was doing it, but it really took me a few years for it to settle in, where I got to the point where now, so December, actually, I just saw this on my calendar a couple of weeks ago. I was looking ahead to December. I had our annual retreat already blocked off 2 days on the third week in December. And I did that last December. So in December, you take the time to write down what's important to you. So if you are planning your entire year, and by the way, it's not like you can only do this or start this in December. You can start this in July. You can start it in August. Do it whenever you want, like whatever works for you. This is just my personal example. So in December, I'll write down what's important to me. So what's important to me personally? For me, it's like fitness. I have competitions I'm doing. Family. So what are birthdays? What are events for my young boys that I know I need to go? My wife's anniversary. What are other key dates that I might have around family? Are there vacations, kids' school time off? All of that down. Anniversaries. Just reading off this list. And then business stuff. Okay, are there events next year? So any of the e-com events? Are there date nights that I want to plan in? Are there key events? Are we doing retreats with our company? Are we doing the Elevar Summit? Anything that I know is going to happen, I'm writing all that down. Once I've identified those known dates, I go in and I block them off in my calendar. I'll color code. So for me, I think it's green is like personal stuff. Purple is marketing, so like sales marketing items. Red is admin or focus time. And I think blue is just like generic. One-on-ones, performance reviews, annual reviews. Everything I just mentioned, I was putting into my calendar. So by the time it was January 1st, I had all of those items blocked off in my calendar. It didn't necessarily stay that way. So there are adjustments that you need to be flexible. It's made such a big difference going into the year where I'm not forgetting key dates that I need to be aware of. Some other things that you can do, this is very subjective, but for me, I started blocking my entire Wednesdays to be a production day. So podcasts or writing or prototyping in product or researching for a product. Wednesdays were like my day. No one can touch it. I just need to do like my deep work time. Mondays would be admin day. Other days would have different themes to it, but I do like theming my days and my weeks, and I would just block it off on my calendar. So that actually meant that I was shifting around recurring invites that were from last year. I had to move those around or say no to some of those for the next year. Once you have all of your big rocks in your calendar, then you just simply move down. So what are your pebbles? So pebbles might be one-on-ones or reviews, things like that, team meetings. And then you have everything within there. There's a great book called The Great CEO Within that talks about grouping meetings and how to cascade those. So if you want to read the book, I think it's a book where you can just read different chapters at a given. Each chapter is somewhat of its own story. I think it's either that, it's A Road Less Stupid. Both of those are great books. The rest of the time, so in that rock, pebble, sand analogy, all the rest of the time, so things that come up during the week, that's just sand. So that's sand that fills in the open time on the calendar. That's generally it's a way for me and our team to ensure we're focusing on our big rocks first. And I think that could be a big help for you, because if you going into next year, if it's that subscription or conversion rate optimization or content creation, TikTok shop, whatever it might be, plan those, like put those blocks in your calendar. It could be researching TikTok shops or buying things from TikTok shop or testing, creating sample test accounts, whatever it might be, like blocking those in to the calendar would be an example of something I would look at in our team. Like, I'm not going to remember the saying off the top of my head, but essentially it goes to, you don't need to tell me what your priorities are. I can look at your calendar and your calendar will tell me what your priorities are. And I think you can take that one step further where your calendar and bank account will tell me what your priorities are. So now that you have your L4 strategic plan and preloaded year concept, you probably have some big goals, which means the person that you are or you were last year is not the same person that you need to be next year in order for you to achieve your goals. Because if you are already that person, got this from my coach, I've heard it 100 times from Dan. If you are already that person that needs to hit these goals, you'd already be achieving your goals. So again, if you got big goals, you are who you were last year, you got to change. There'll have to be something that changes for you because the company needs you to change. Your team needs you to change, to step up and show up so you can hit your goals. So you might be thinking like, what the heck does that mean? This is where I get into the new you concept. What I learned from David Cancel, from the founder of Drift. And he essentially explained it in a very simple manner of you are entering a new year where he knew he had to change and he had to break habits in order for them, the company, to hit their goals. He has a responsibility just like everyone else. So recognizing that there were changes that he needed to make from his old self in the previous year in order to spend that time, be the person he needs to be in the next year in order to achieve his goals, he had to break those habits. The thing that really resonated was he communicated this with his team. So for example, if last year he was in every customer success meeting, this year or next year, he's not. So it's a habit he's breaking. Hey, I know I used to be in every CS meeting last year. However, we have some massive goals ahead for this upcoming year, which means I have some big initiatives and rocks that I need to handle. Therefore, I will no longer be in CS meetings going forward. You can use another example like Slack. Hey, I used to be in every single Slack channel and you can ping me and I'll answer any question. I can't do that next year because that is going to limit me from hitting my goals. So I'm no longer in Slack. Those are just a couple examples. I really like the concept of this, and I've taught this to my team as well because there's another good analogy, the law of the lid. So if you don't grow past the lid, you're going to stagnate. You're going to essentially reach your growth ceiling. And that is a concept that I really like with this new you of just, again, if you're going through the preloaded year, you've done the L4, you've done your strategy, you've looked at what you need to achieve, your rocks, you put it into your calendar, naturally, you're going to see things like, holy cow, I can't add all this new stuff to my plate. I need to prune some of this. Find those areas that you can prune and communicate with your team, communicate with your leaders, your team. It's such a cool but simple framework that, I just love it. So find out, identify what are those habits or expectations. This was another point that David made where, so you might be working with people for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and they still think of you as the person from 6 years ago, but you are not the same person. They may have the same expectations of you of 6 years ago when you're grinding it out, but we're 6 years forward, the company can't have that same person in you show up. Otherwise, you won't reach your goals. So communicating and resetting expectations of who you are going into a new year can be one of the, in my opinion, biggest game changers to set yourself and your team and your company up for success and allow your team to learn from you. So to wrap everything up, that's the new you. We went through the preloaded year, the strategic planning, the L4 forecasting. I like to put all of these together, combine them into one so you can do these in different days throughout the week. It can hopefully make a big impact on you and your planning for next year. And just to reiterate what I mentioned in the beginning, there's so many parallels that I see in D2C brands and SaaS businesses. At the end of the day, we're trying to solve problems for our customers or give delight our customers, and the operations, the nuances of what we're doing is largely the same. So if this was valuable, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Either leave a comment, shoot me an email, brad@getelevar, subscribe, whether it's podcast, YouTube, and I look forward to hearing your feedback and seeing you on the next video.